Good evening. Welcome to the Zanesville City Schools Special Board of Education meeting for May 31st, 2022 at 6 p.m. I call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Baldwin.
Here.
Mrs. Clark.
Here.
Mr. Hickman.
Here.
Mrs. Lee.
Here.
Ms. Long.
Here. The purpose of the special board meeting is number one, an urgent necessity for paving. Number two, administrative evaluations. Number three, HVAC controls. Number four, a board work session. And number five, any other business which may lawfully be considered at this meeting. Open session will be held to approve any resolutions. Resolution declaring that an urgent necessity exists for district-wide paving repairs. Whereas Section 3313.46 of the revised code requires boards of education to advertise for bids for a period of 2 weeks when they determine to make certain improvements, the cost of which will exceed $50,000, and to award contracts to the lowest responsible bidder except in case of urgent necessity. And whereas the board suffered district-wide damage to its parking lots due to ice storms from the most recent winter, and whereas in order to prevent further damage and deterioration to the parking lots and to ensure the safety of students, staff, and visitors, the board has been advised that the process for repairing the parking lots must be commenced as soon as possible in order to ensue the completion prior to the commencement of the 2022-2023 school year. And whereas this board finds that such circumstances warrant the declaration of urgent necessity and the awarding of a contract for the improvements outside of the 2-week bid advertisement and other procedures otherwise required under Section 3313.46 of the revised code. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Education of Zanesville City School District, Muskingum County, Ohio, that Section 1, finding of urgent necessity for the aforesaid reasons, this board hereby finds, determines, and declares that an urgent necessity exists in respect to the work as set forth in the preamble to this resolution, that compliance with the relatively lengthy procedures prescribed by Section 3313.46 of the revised code could comprise the educational mission of the district, and that said Section 3313.46 does not apply to the contract approved under Section 2 herein. Section 2, approval of contract. The treasurer of this board is hereby authorized and directed to enter into a contract with Parnell and Associates for the paving repairs in accordance with the vendor's quote currently on file for a contract sum not exceeding $355,397.25, which amount is hereby appropriated for the purpose and authorized to be advanced. Section 3, modifications. This board hereby authorizes the treasurer to act on behalf of the board with respect to resolution of contractor claims and to consider and approve modifications and increase in any contract sum payable to the contractor up to an aggregate cap of 5% of the contract sum. No modifications shall be approved, signed, or delivered that would require the board to spend an additional amount for cost unless the treasurer of this board shall certify that there is available or in the process of collection to the credit of an appropriate fund and not encumbered for any other purpose the amount needed to meet the board's additional obligations incurred by virtue of the modification. The board further authorizes the authorized representative to act on behalf of the board with respect to decisions required by the board for the work, which includes the authority to approve schedules and amendments to the schedules. Section 4, approval and execution of related documents and related actions. The president or vice president and treasurer of the board and the superintendent or such other school district officials as shall as shall be designated by their official as appropriate, are each authorized and directed to sign any certificates or documents and to take such other action as are desirable, advisable, necessary, or appropriate to consummate the transaction and carry out the work contemplated by this resolution and the contract. Section 5, prior acts ratified and confirmed. Any actions previously taken by school district officials or agents of this board in furtherance of the matters set forth in the related to this resolution are hereby approved, ratified, and confirmed. Section 6, compliance with open meeting requirements. It is hereby found and determined that all formal actions of this Board of Education concerning and relating to the adoption of this resolution were taken and that all deliberations of this Board of Education that resulted in such formal actions were held in meetings in compliance with the law. Section 7, captions and headings. The captions and headings in this resolution are solely for convenience of reference and in no way define, limit, or describe the scope of intent of any sections, subsections, paragraphs, subparagraphs, or clauses hereof. Reference to the section means a section of this resolution unless otherwise indicated. Section 8, effective date. The resolution shall be in full force and effect from the immediately upon its adoption. May I have a motion to accept?
Bob want to move.
A second to
Hickman on second.
any discussion?
Are we doing any overlays or, I mean, what's the entire scope?
We will be doing several patches at the high school in front of Country Road. They'll be milling and filling those. We are going to do an overlay at the maintenance garage between the maintenance grounds building and weight room football field, that parking lot. St. Mary Intermediate will get some milling and filling patching. National Road will get some substantial patches out there as well, mill and fill. This parking lot will get completely milled and remade. The rest of the lots will be crack filled and sealed and restriped, with the exception of the middle school. We're not going to do anything there due to, that wouldn't make sense to do anything right now with the construction, traffic, and everything.
Okay.
And hopefully that's going to be incorporated within that new project once it's completed. They put things back the way it should be. So that's the scope of it right now. And then hopefully moving forward, once we get things done this summer, I would love to sit down with this contractor and put together a 5-year forecast of what lots make the most sense to do what with in the coming years. So Mr. Young and I can budget for a certain amount, whatever is doable each year, and pick the things that are the most needed to keep those in a cycle to where we keep those up.
Okay, so on this number, it's about 50-50 paving and crack fill and seal. Just depending on which building has more of that. The amount, I believe it's 52,000, give or take. That's this building. So it's completely milling and paving this lot. It's crack fill and seal this parking lot and the one on the other end of the building. That 52,000 will come out of the general fund because this is not a new building. Facilities maintenance money cannot be used for that. The remaining balance will come out of the maintenance fund for the other buildings.
So just to I guess, curb somebody's expectations, we are not repaving all these lots in their entirety.
Correct, because that's,
Patches.
you're probably at $1 million
Okay.
to do that.
Okay.
We're hoping that the crack fill and seal will extend the life of the parking lots. Now, this does not include the driveway behind the scoreboard. So from that back gate to the weight room, that's a completely separate issue with the water that's there. That you may have to have a culvert, to do it right. It's going to be an issue. And then obviously, as Matt said, it does not include the middle school with the anticipated construction. Why would we fix it? And they're just gonna tear it up. Let them fix it when they're done.
Any further discussion?
The additional 5% wiggle room.
That's,
I mean-
maybe change orders or,
Okay.
asphalt price with the oil. It's all over the place. I mean, it's hard to tell. It just gives us the authority to do 5%. Anything above that, we need to come back to you guys.
And they would start when?
I will touch on that, the 5% thing.
Mhm.
On the phone this afternoon with the contractor. That's a good point, because he said, once they get out there, they start doing the work that they've already looked at and that we've already assessed and that they plan to do, they may see a small spot somewhere. And they did put a cost on the quote for $400 a ton for asphalt for if there's additional patching or something that we see and we think, well, since we're right here, this really should be patched, this area, this little small area, whatever.
Mhm.
Obviously, we would not go with 5%. We
Yeah.
have to talk about it before we approve doing.
Okay.
The time
The
frame.
timeframe, yeah, he said he will get started, he will have all this done first week of August. Get everything completed and ready for us to do.
We suggested to him the high school, the first 2 weeks of July, since we're going through a dead period of July 1 through 10 for athletics.
Yeah.
Be less traffic, less people up there, especially that back section between the maintenance and the weight room would be the only people down there are going to be the maintenance guys. So they could park over by the scoreboard and walk around to get over to the building.
And the way he talked today, he'll be able to have a crew, once he gets the first area milled, like he's paving, his milling crew can do the next area, obviously, would be milling, and him following them behind. And it's a different crew that crack seals and seals, so they can be doing some of the lots as well at the same time.
Okay.
So the high school is the worst though, right?
The driveway is,
The driveway in high
right.
school is the worst.
Okay.
Getting National Road's running a really, really tight race for me, and that one spot, National Road keeps getting broke up with the trash truck and stuff going in and out there.
Right.
And he's planning to do a little bit of a heavier duty pavement there to try to keep from that happening, so. But, yeah, the high school,
Yeah, I haven't been to National Road,
Yeah.
so I almost lost my car in that one coming around
high school.
at the high school.
And that
Yeah,
one on the corner just appeared this winter.
yeah.
That was not there when we went into the fall season last year. And with this winter we had, that one was there when winter was over.
Yeah.
And it was like, wow. Where'd that come from?
I just, would hate to see damage come to somebody's car and then they come back on us.
Yep, we would definitely.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm excited about being able to get on maintenance plan,
Mhm.
keep things, rolling.
What about the gravel parking lots, like at Zane Gray, teachers use, and I think John McIntyre?
they may get some of the millings. The problem with that, Matt, jump in here when I need help. The problem with that is to all the permits from the city, you have to put islands and lights and all kinds of things in them. It's not just paving now. And so while they will allow us to not pave them by ordinance, they're letting us keep them gravel. When the day comes that we have to pave those, it will be a considerable cost, and you will lose parking spots as they exist, by putting the islands in. And like I said, you
We
got,
almost lose a third of that working on it, John McIntyre. By code, spec, when you have to do the green space, that they figure per square foot of parking lot. The curbing, the islands, the green space, the trees. You lose.
we pay more for stormwater runoff.
Yeah.
Plus, you're gonna pay a whole lot more.
So we're hoping they use the millings to fill some areas in those lots, and they can maybe tamp them down a little bit, tighter, compact them a little bit more.
Anything else? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mrs. Lee,
Yes.
Ms. Long,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin.
Yes.
Okay, now we have some issues for work session that we like to discuss. Do we want to do this while we're live? Okay.
Except for the ones
Except for,
that deal with items to go into executive session.
Correct. Wanted to speak about purchasing books for libraries. I know that's been addressed at a couple of different schools and been brought to the board from various teachers and librarians about purchasing books and books that were polled that were purchasing. Some of the books were replacing books that were already in the library. And I think there were some comments related to that. Lori, I know you had.
Yeah, I just wanted, if somebody can clarify the process that was happened and this new review process that is not in board policy, that I don't think it is. So I just, any clarifications on what happened?
so I can speak to part of it. So I think one in particular is at the high school. That was grant funded. Okay, that original grant was awarded in April of 21. Was supposed to be spent by December of 21. And I'm not sure where the extension came from. I just have the same emails that show the extension. And so I'm assuming, based on the reconciliation that had to be done of what you purchased with that money, with those funds, had to be done by the end of April. That's where the extension came, had till the end of April to make that purchase. So we were still up against the 11th hour making those purchases. And typically when they're done on Amazon, they're ordered by the treasurer's office. And so there was just some question at that point of, we're rushing, has everything been done? So I asked the question, has this been done, proper approval been done on this all the way through? And the response I got back was, what do you mean? So at that point, I thought, okay, we need to make sure we're doing this. So I sent the board policy with regards to that back up to them and just passed along, the list and said, listen, I don't know what's been done, what's not been done with this. So again, I look at every single requisition that comes down. Some of them are grant funded, some of them are general funds, so some of them require a little bit more scrutiny than others, but certainly not from my office was a decision intended to be made. What it was, or just make sure we're following policy. And I think because of that, what do you mean response, I wasn't sure, okay, have we done everything we're supposed to be doing? That's the only question I had at that point. So
From what I heard, when the grant was awarded, she asked, what are the next steps? And she was told she would be told what the next steps were for purchasing. And then I believe from you. And then when the survey came to say, hey, post grant, we need to fill out, she's like, wait a second, I haven't had a chance to purchase these books. So that's what put the deadline. And then I do believe she already knew what board policy was, meaning that she sent them through the principal to be approved. So the list that was there was approved by Mr. Grandstaff. And from there, that's what board policy states, is that it's supposed to be approved by the principal.
correct.
And so then it was approved. I guess my next question is when the titles that were ordered and then pulled from the shipment, did anyone do any research on whether those titles were appropriate for the audience? Because you have a certified librarian vetting those books, and she did her due diligence. One of them was already cataloged in our library. She was only replacing it. And Common Sense Media says that it is appropriate for ages 14 and up, and it stands out for positive role models, and it has A+ for educational value. So I guess my question is, whoever said, yeah, we need to take these out of the box. Did anyone else do any research on those titles?
I think
after
we're in
the
the
fact.
process of doing that now, so there was no rush. We're into summer, so we're ordering the books. We're gonna go through them and take a peek at them, and see if there's an issue. There is a process for complaints. So what we want to do is take a look at these books from that complaint process to see if we get a complaint, do we have all of our ducks in a row?
But was there a complaint? I guess, was there a complaint filed?
No, there wasn't, but anybody can file a complaint. I can file a
True,
complaint.
true.
So why not do it on the front end? And say, okay, if there's a question about this, let's take a look at it from that perspective.
Because I also think you're setting a precedent. Because do you know how that title ended up in the library in the first place?
Which
All-
title are you talking about?
I'm talking about the title Heroine by Minnie McGinnis.
Okay,
We know how it ended up in our collections to begin
I
with?
do not have the background on
Okay,
that.
so every library in our district has a Junior Library Guild subscription. That Junior Library Guild subscription is curated by Junior Library Guild according to the genre, age level that you select at the beginning of the year. So if we're going to say that everything needs to go through a review process, we're not doing that currently. And you're also saying now, I guess my question is how you're going to now review things that are already the procedures established, and we haven't done that in the past. And now you're going to say, well, now we have to look at every title on the I just feel like we're on a slippery slope. And also, I feel like when the email came out that we're going to review now every book collection requests that teachers, librarians put forth by a separate review committee, now you're also saying to the teacher, to the librarian, you've gone through board policy and it's been approved by your principal, but now we don't trust you. So I feel like we're just like.
I think what we need is more direction on what approved by the principal, approved by the superintendent. Are we you just want us to check the box and send it down the line, or do we want to take a look at what we're purchasing?
So you're saying
What are
that,
your criteria, what's your
That's
criteria
what
that
I'm
you're
asking.
looking at?
That's
Because
my
some
criteria.
books, I don't want us to be like, oh, we can't have these books because this talks about somebody's, race. This talks about, this, or this talks about, I don't like that. I don't like that keeping kids from actually knowing what the real world's about.
Right.
If you keep from certain books from coming in to the library that are age appropriate, that have been approved by, I'm not even saying by the principal, but approved by, the guild or whoever does that knows curriculum and knows that reading level. I don't think that we should be, I don't even know how I want to say it, that we should be keeping kids from being able to read about certain subjects. That's what I don't want us to get into.
I don't believe that's where we're going with this. I think what we're saying is, I think there's certain texts that are out there that we need to have a larger conversation on. So I'll give you an example. If I'm a student and I write the same piece of work, or if I'm a student and in a conversation with the teacher, or if I'm a student and I want to publish something in a school newspaper, if we had that, and it would not be allowed, would that same language be allowed in the library? And the answer might be yes. The answer might be no. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. What is the criteria? What criteria? Because we're saying to approve them, but we've got no criteria to judge it against.
I'm saying though, you have a licensed librarian that understands how to curate a collection appropriate for grade level
Okay.
for each building. They
You're
know.
comfortable with all the language in that book. That's what I want to know.
I am absolutely comfortable for somebody to self-select a book and come in the library. Now, if a parent says, I don't want my child to read this book, we're good with that. I'm saying, why are we not going to make it available to all students in that building when it's appropriate for that grade level in that building?
I'm just asking the question, what criteria do you want us to look at before we hit the approval button on things?
I think you should leave it up to the librarian. I mean, obviously she knows what she's talking about,
You to check the box and send it
No,
down the
now you're
line.
not trusting, now you're saying that all your administrators are doing is just, are just signing things off. I
I'm
would
asking a
say-
question. That's what you want. That's what I'm hearing.
I would say that the principal, per board policy,
Yeah.
the principal is reviewing the selections or reviewing the list. And if
Using
they have
what-
questions,
Using what criteria? I'm asking you, what criteria do you want them to use to review?
what does board policy state?
It's silent on it.
Okay. So I'm saying that I trust that a licensed person in curriculum and also in a classroom teacher, they know what's appropriate for their population. I guess what my question would be to you is if you would like board policy to be something different, then we need to probably look at board policy. And you can,
I'm asking you just the question. When the principal looks at it before, and he's supposed to give its approval and do his review, what criteria do you want that principal to utilize before they send it down to the district office?
I would say that would be between the principal and the teacher or librarian.
And
That they can
if-
have
And
that
if he has a
conversation.
question with that certain book, then he can call that person in and say, you know, what, I might have an issue with this book. So tell me about it, why you selected it.
And right now, the only criteria that these two books were the title. There were other books in that collection that she turned in that you probably, somebody with another eye could have said, no, this is not, I don't think this is appropriate.
Correct,
So-
and that's where that whole complaint policy comes into place. And again, if you look through the eyes of that complaint process on the front end, as opposed to 7 years later when somebody has a complaint about it, now no one who knows who's responsible, and no one has any of the background on it. And so that's part of that complaint process.
Well, she used school library journal to evaluate those. And I would say, again, anybody who challenges a book, there's a
Mhm.
challenge process that they go through
Correct.
in order to then justify why they don't think the book should be. And then the person, the librarian, has a chance to rebuttal. So on why they think it is
Yeah.
appropriate. So, I mean, it is pretty clear cut as far as the challenge process goes. And again, when we're challenging a book, we're saying we want to challenge that that book is going to be removed from our shelves. I think if a parent is coming to say, you know, I don't think that's appropriate for my student, a parent has every right in the world to say that book is not appropriate for my student. And I would not check that book out to their student.
Okay.
So I think that our kids have limited life experiences to begin with. Literature and books within a self-choice in a library or in a classroom library is their chance to have open the world to them and to experiences that we have not been able to give them. So I think by saying that, because we might not think it might be appropriate for our own child, or you're thinking, oh, that might be a delicate, conversation. We also don't know what's happening in their life that they might need to have that conversation with somebody.
And no one's disagreeing with that. But what we're saying is, what's the rush? Why can't we ask for more information?
Because it just didn't seem very transparent. It seemed very, the fact that the boxes were being opened down in the main office by a secretary, and they were pulling those books before the librarian could even get to the books. It just seems very, and the fact that the books were ordered to begin with and then pulled out, I mean, that screams a lot of red flags to me.
Well, and again, we'll take a look at that, but I think there's no problem. I don't think there has to be a rush to things. If anyone along the way says, I'd like to have a little bit more information about this, that we deserve that latitude to say that. Because again, another criteria to look at, that you have to look at. Again, if my child brought home a book with some of the language and some of the text we have, and then they get in trouble for using profanity in a classroom, and they say, I used this word one time, it's in this book 38 times. Maybe that's right. Maybe it's not right. I don't know, but I think we have that conversation.
We also know that they all have phones and Google and see much more out of context on those phones.
Not provided to them by the school.
True.
Okay.
However, I'm just saying though, I think the thing that makes me more uncomfortable than anything is the fact that the trust of the librarian, the trust of the teachers, I feel like they are being questioned for the job that they're doing. And they're not being seen as professionals in what they're doing. And that's the part that I think is going to be more harmful than either of these two books being put in our library.
So again, I'm hearing, don't worry about checks and balances.
When they did the checks and balances and they followed the procedure that was in place, that's what's concerning to me. Because now the rules changed. All of a sudden, the rules have changed. And somebody feels like they didn't do their due diligence when they did. And I mean, I've been in the situation and nobody ever went through all my titles in Junior Library Guild to check what was being ordered. They said, oh, okay, Mrs. Lee knows how to do her job. And so, yeah, we're going to let her do her job. So I guess that's the part that I feel like we're really causing, again, distrust and people feeling like, okay, I'm not being supported in the job that I'm doing. And that's the part that I think is really upsetting.
Point taken.
Anything else along that line? Okay, 2, we're going to put back into executive session. 3, the ZHS club days. And I know, Janet, I think you had some questions on that.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I know that I had a conversation with one of the seniors, one of the senior leaders, and he said that they get one club day on Friday. That's it. Or one day a week. And they have to select one or the other, like they can only do one club per semester. Okay. And they were told that the reason they couldn't have multiple club days or whatever was because there was no one to watch the kids in the hallway. Yeah, because kids were running back and forth in the hallway and they couldn't keep track. And I wasn't cool with that, just because I think that those extracurricular club activities go on their resume for school, go on their application for school. And if they're only allowed to pick one club day per semester, I mean, that to me, that doesn't, things were just different when we were in school. And I understand that things are different now, but I guess they have a club that is game club and they go in the gym and play basketball. I mean, you know, I don't understand that. So I guess I don't know where all that came about, that rule that came about for basically one club day. And I mean, that's hard if you want to be, he wants to be in student council and he wants to, you know, do the
Club and
yeah,
voices,
Key Club and all that, but
yeah.
they can only pick one per semester. So I'm not quite sure where that came about, but that was concerning to me.
Whether it's possible that they can move from one to another. You know, can they
Right.
belong to more than one in a semester?
Right. Or I know that it's hard to have stuff after school, but they have sports after school, you know, and then he was saying, you know, there are some kids that don't want to be part of sports, that aren't part of sports. Is there a club that can meet after school? Is there one of these? Because I'm not sure when Key Club meets, but, you know, is there a different way that we can maybe maneuver the clubs to
If
come
you're
up with
gonna
a
keep
new
staff
idea?
members here after school, then there would have to be supplements.
Right,
for
okay.
them.
So, I mean, is it required? I don't know how they work the one day a week. I mean, is it like,
It's built into the day. It's a period every day. that
okay,
They have, but not all days in that period are designated towards clubs. Some of
Okay.
those days are designated for tutoring and some other items.
Okay.
So every day, 10:06, I believe, this is a period. That is for something, and one day a week to your point is a clinic.
is the club
Is my
day?
understanding.
Yeah,
I-
yeah,
Jan, I'll just speak to how it was, I think when originally was brought on was the idea to get everybody involved in something. So everybody involved in something that they wanted to be involved in.
Okay.
So I think the difficulty is for the kiddos that are involved in multiple things. My guess is that the idea was, okay, this quarter, you're going to pick the club that you want to go to so that everybody was in, everybody had an assigned place that they
Right.
were going.
Right,
Because there is a tendency on that period in that day
to roam.
that.
Right, and I get that.
They tend to
But
roam.
why, so this is my question. So are there no people that can be in the hallway to make sure that that's not happening? That they're not
I
roaming?
think it's dependent upon the number of clubs they have available. Because
Okay.
you have a staff member assigned to each club, and if they don't have a club, then they should have a duty. So if they have 40 clubs and 40
Right.
staff members, then there's no one to watch the halls.
Right,
If they
exactly.
have 20 clubs, then they can have 20 people
Right.
watching those, and then 20 people in the hallways.
Okay. I guess I just want to make sure that our kids are getting every access that they can get to clubs, because they are trying to get into college. And whether or not people believe it, the colleges do look at those clubs and those extracurricular activities, because that's helping them social, that's helping them, get skills and be able to maneuver and actually function after they leave high school. And that was my concern.
And I think the directive was this year that they were trying to get every teacher to have some kind of club, something they were interested in that they could share with students.
Okay,
So, and I do think the more traditional clubs tend to meet additional times past just that Friday.
okay,
So
all right.
like
So
your
like
key
student
club,
council and all
student
that, okay,
council.
all right.
So
I
these
just
are-
want to make sure that
These are
those were
ones that, like knitting club,
Chess
euchre
club.
club.
in game club, all that, okay,
Yeah,
all right,
board club,
yeah,
board games. Cooking club, I think they had a cooking club or
Okay,
something
all
like
right,
that. So,
yeah. I just wanted to make sure that the big ones, not that the knitting club is not important, but that the big one, the major ones, where those kids were having access to all of those. And that was a concern for me, so.
Next one, we were concerned about hearing issues on behavior. I know we've addressed this throughout the year, and the fighting, the process is going through. Is this being addressed like for next year? What's being done? Are those kids being put out when they're fighting routinely? Is it the same kids over and over again? What's kind of happening there, especially at the high school? I think, Janet, you were concerned
A
on
lot
that
of
too.
fighting
You had heard
going
from
on,
that.
yeah.
We'll pull stats and see on number of students, number of repeat offenders, and what happens for a first, second, or third offense.
Yeah,
May I address one thing though, that Mr. Clark asked? So, because I think it's important moving forward. And we did receive a grant through the state behavioral health. And I think it's significant because it's going to, when we talk about getting ahead of the problem, it's really, we don't need to be reactive, we need to be proactive.
exactly.
And this is going to do that because the grant was over $1 million.
Awesome.
And so it's going to put boots on the ground, and it's going to put people in to address more individual issues with students, because that's how the grant is written. I mean, I'm not against having a group of kids receive some, but we do know that especially with repeat offenders, having 17 years as a principal in elementary, those kids need to do one-on-one. So that's what this is going to do. So I think that was just important to say, because I think that's a good point of getting ahead for next year. So we're having a meeting next week where we're going to drill down into that grant and really come up with some ideas with principals, guidance counselors of what that can look like.
Whose boots will be on the ground? Are we bringing more staff in or what?
State and behavioral health is actually the fiscal agent for the grant.
Mhm.
So we have their people that are, so kind of like Kevin does already, he has contracts with them to come into the schools, but there's only so much money. But the money's not going to be an issue, quite frankly, and we've already opened that discussion with them to get more people. And again, and I'm not against group sessions of that's not the point. But we know that repeat offenders need that one-on-one, and that's what this is going to do.
Definitely.
It's going to be bringing people in, and we're going to tap other people to work with us.
And we're doing a lot of that at the middle school and high school,
Absolutely,
both.
that is.
because they need the
district-wide
target.
grant.
Yeah.
District-wide grant.
Okay.
Yeah, and thank you for that grant, because that is
Well,
so
I
needed.
didn't
Well,
write it,
whoever
but
did it, yes,
I worked with them on it.
because that's
Human
huge.
Behavioral health was
Yeah,
God
that's
said.
huge.
So that is huge.
And I think that that is one of the problems, because statistically, kids that act out have issues. And they're getting attention, and there's some reason that they want that attention. And so,
We wrote in a family complaint for that reason. So
exactly,
we're gonna
yeah,
be able to reach out to families and kind of, not just, it's not gonna just be. a school.
right. And I will tell you that 8 out of the 10 kids that I have dealt with, mom and dad have a hand in that. So it's a family, there's family barriers and there's traumas on all sides. And, these kids are carrying more of a weight than they've had to in a long time, especially now after the pandemic. I mean, there's just additional things on top of barriers, on top of barriers. And I think that that's going to be a very positive thing for them. So hopefully that will, now you're always going to have issues, but hopefully that will curb some of the issues. And mainly what they said was there was a lot of fighting. It wasn't necessarily a whole lot of bullying. It was just fighting. But again, a lot of it's probably coming from some bullying through cyber bullying, through the phones, through whatever. So yeah, that's going to be great. That's exciting to hear.
Part of that was also a part of a social media challenge. Students were getting into fights and filming them to post as a challenge.
Right, the TikTok thing. It's a downfall. I mean, it's a downfall for these kids.
I know we've talked in the past, mentorship and personal development. Are we having mentorship roles? Like, kids used to go out someplace. Are we still doing that?
We have the mentorship program, which I didn't get. I didn't approach Dollar General this year because with the pandemic, quite honestly, I had money. So I used it again. We had approximately, I believe, over 47 students in high school that worked with our 21st century, in 21st century with our elementary kids. And I believe very strongly in that program. Wasn't as big this year because again, we're recovering from that. Kids were not, I think kids were not as apt to jump into is what I'm gonna say. And of course, I played COVID for everything, but I played COVID because I think they were off for a year and a half and then they came back. So yes, and so that's one program that we have that's been, I think, a big success. And this year we're currently in the process of rewarding those kids with, like for the number of hours they put in, we equated it with gift cards to give them some kind of, because they
Incentive.
Right. How about personal development or mentorship for high school students? Is there any kind of a program out there
Tom Crawley,
for them?
it's under his bailiwick, and part of his role as guidance supervisor is to develop business relationships and get our students involved into internships. Like our project Lead the Way Biomedical Science, that fourth year for that is supposed to be utilized to have a partnership. Again, pre-COVID, we actually had a program for those fourth year Project Lead the Way students they were spending a good deal of time at Genesis. The board at the time actually bought them all lab coats to be worn at the hospital. So we're trying to revitalize all those things post-COVID.
Good. Okay.
Then we were addressing the minority report card. And I know, Janet, that was another one that you had asked for more information regarding that.
Yeah, I had a meeting with, I think Mr. Roberts, who is the president of the NAACP for Ohio. And he said that our minority students in our school district we're receiving an F. And I don't even know how well we're doing with non-minority students as far as that goes. So I don't know. Have you seen the report? Have you seen the report at all?
I have not.
So I can get that to you.
Sure.
And you can kind of look over as far, it goes from, academics all the way to, just life skills and things like that. So, and honestly, I think it's for minority and non-minority students. I mean, I don't think that we're touching every base that we possibly can for those kiddos. So,
we're currently working with the enterprise community, it's led by James McDonald. We've been doing a lot of work with them this year on that. We've done some conferences with them. Also went site visits with them. We're meeting about every 2 months to get minority students more engaged in what's happening in the school system. There's a national plan, and we're using that as the model
Good.
for the work that we're doing.
All right. Okay, good. Well, I will get you both copies of that report card. It's interesting.
And that will take us into the MOTS group update. And I know there's a paper here in front of us, and I think Dr. Baker, you got information.
Correct.
Yeah.
We had met today at the field. Again, last time we met with them, they wanted to put buckets to catch water and then a drainage system. Those buckets were located in different areas in the field. And that was what we had declined to accept as a fix. Their first proposal today was for the same or similar system, although they were referring to this system as a halo system. And so it wouldn't actually be on the playing surface, it would be around the outside to pull the water, because the field is mainly flat, but it has a little bit of a crown to it, so it would drain to the outside and then it would go into that halo that they would build around, and then it would go out. And we weren't particularly keen with that as a solution. They said that would take about 4 days, and they could probably start in a week or two on that. The next solution that they proposed, when we said we weren't really keen on that, because that was very similar to what we had already said was not acceptable to us, would be a project that they would have to get back to us on, because there's a special piece of equipment called I think they said the Eliminator, that is currently being used on another project. But in essence, what they do is they remove all the sand and all the little black pellets that are woven into the turf, and that's all taken out. And then they cut the seams every so many yards where it's sewn together. That's how they put the field together in the first place, is they put it in rolls, and then they sew it together. And what they would do is roll those up once all the material all that media is taken off at the top, and they would dig down and replace the fill underneath, which is currently blocking up, and then roll the fill back out, glue it in place. And they're saying that's the industry standard, is to glue those back in place. They said actually some schools now are requesting the glue over the stitching, because it's a better process and it doesn't perforate the turf. And then they put the medium back in and groom it back in. They would extend our warranty for 2 years. So essentially our 10-year warranty would stop when they return the field to us after this. Now, this is about a 30-day process. So we would, from whenever they started, we'd probably have to be off the field for a month. But it would be in place for the fall season, and shouldn't have a drainage issue after that. And Matt or Mike, anybody else was at the meeting, want to throw in some words?
So would they be starting soon?
It depends on the piece of equipment that's on a job somewhere
they're just
else,
waiting
but
on it.
obviously it would be that if this is agreeable, then the sooner that we can let them know, the sooner they'd be able to put it into the schedule. But it wouldn't be as fast as getting it into the schedule as that Halo project, and it would be much longer to actually do the work. But I think what we were trying to convey to them is we just don't want to keep kicking the can down the road. We'd rather have the ideal fix instead of putting in the Haley system, and if that doesn't work, then coming back to this at a later time.
All right.
What about football practices and so forth?
They may have to, depending
Get
on the
another
weather,
spot
they may have to
coming,
pick
yeah,
another
depending on-
spot to
yeah.
start the season.
Aren't the drains centered in the field? Is the groundwater directed to the center and then it exits out towards the pit? Is that, isn't
I
that-
think they're every 30 feet, it's every 10 yards.
but it's pitched to the center?
They go across.
They go across.
They go
the field.
across every 10 yards.
There's a cross drain across the field every 10 yards, whatever. And then they go to, there's a main over on the visitor side. There's a storm drain, storm sewer that is a couple feet under the field.
Mhm.
And they all come in and tie into that and go out. Okay. So they basically route, everything routes to the visitor side.
Mhm.
The drain pipes is all tied in, and then they go to that one drain over there.
I don't see how a halo or a perimeter drain would fix that problem. Unless, are we getting all the runoff off of the hill? Is that off the stadium and?
There's drains on outside the track.
Yeah.
So it shouldn't be getting.
The perimeter drain isn't gonna fix it. So,
It's not getting down. It's all surface water. is what
Mhm.
we get.
mhm,
And the substrate, base
mhm,
has dissipated over the period of years. It's turned to powder.
Mhm.
Your
mhm,
limestone, it's not a hard, it's a soft stone.
mhm,
And what happened is I think, I wasn't here when they built the field in '08, but there was some talk about the different things that happened with the product that they used. Wasn't exactly the standard of what it should have been. It has since turned to powder and,
concrete.
crumbled and, which, which I don't understand because today, and I'm not, by any means a genius about a football field, but anytime you put a base down on a road or something, I can see it dissipate. If you chip and seal or something like that, you're driving.
Hmm.
It's going to go away. It's going to crumble. It's going to wear. It's going to.
Weather, it's
Yeah,
a natural
It's
product.
going to, it's soft. It's going to crumble. It's going to eventually go away.
Mhm.
This is on a football field. All you have is foot traffic. If it's underneath that turf and that rubber infill and that sand, which gives you a pad of that thick on top of it, there is no way that stone should have ever gotten to the point that this is at. So it was bad material to begin with.
Where was it sourced or where did it come from?
I think Shelley and Sands.
But then how they compounded that was they didn't take it out. They didn't remove it.
Mhm.
So supposedly they stirred it up, and it's like Mike said, and everybody said, that we seen what anybody could see up there. We never seen them till it or stir it or do anything with it.
Mhm.
They added all the rubber infill into it to mitigate it, this new system they tried. And what's happened is, it's all, when we pulled the turf up at that drain, to be able to find that drain, it was like concrete.
Hmm.
It was like screenings
Mhm.
over a period of time, getting wet and it was solid.
Mhm.
So to Kevin's point, those drain pipes are underneath there. The water's
They're
not getting to the
Not
drain
getting to
pipes.
They're
There's
blocked.
the pipes are working. We put water in, we tested all the places we could put water into the open drains up there,
Mhm.
and it went out. There's no plug in the drains, there's nothing obstructing drains. They're working. It's basically that stuff is locking up, like, when we pulled the turf back, after they had just put it down, there was mud under it.
Yeah.
Why? It's the base problem. And they're
Basically,
saying they're gonna remove it all, correct?
this is what they were supposed to do last summer and they didn't do it.
And,
Yeah, it says they're gonna excavate
They
the,
switched gears last
compacted
summer
stone.
and decided to mitigate.
Well, I don't think they knew what that crew was doing. I mean, I still will say that to this day, that
No,
there was, whatever the supervision was, know, it's,
So my point out there today was, you started this in '08, and you had drainage issues. You punched the field twice or 3 times in that period of time. We've done the special treatments of solution once a year, sometimes twice a year, to get it to drain. And you can't tell me if it was that bad to start with, and it's went that many years of wear and breaking down.
Mhm.
Why would you have not taken it out and replaced it? It's not gonna get better, it's gonna get worse.
Right. Right.
And it's just so compacted, it's like walking on this roof. We had to take a spade shovel that day and actually dig to get through it. It should be stone, limestone. When you take that off, it should be limestone.
Yeah. So they dig it up, they're gonna put limestone back,
Exactly.
hopefully to something that's a little harder, because there are different grades.
Right.
And washed.
Yeah.
Clean.
Do we have to use limestone? Yeah.
That, I'm not positive, but I think so. But see, that's the other thing is, there's washed stone and there's dirty stone. If you buy washed stone, it's a lot better stone. You get rid of all that powder off of it, you get rid of all the residue off of it, and put it underneath the football field, it should never break down. This should be there 25 years and never break down. You should never have to replace that base. You may have to replace that turf, that carpet, but you should never have to replace that base.
Yeah.
To your point, is different grades of stone, and they need to put in a very top grade stone. It's clean and it's hard. It's not one.
It's a best thing up there, state, I think.
Correct.
About the time,
Yeah.
Say that.
Should that be?
You know this stuff, Kyle. Is there something else that could be put in? I mean, so do these guys, but I mean, he's a geologist.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, there's other things that I've seen people use on roadways and stuff, coal slag and some other things. You know, I don't know if there's some chemistry that happens that maybe we don't want to deal with, things like that. You know, limestone is
Well,
relatively safe from a discharging standpoint,
the
things like
difference,
that.
you have gravel and you have limestone. Gravel's 100 times harder than limestone.
Mm-hmm.
It's round.
Right.
There's no edges to it, obviously, it's a round stone. It won't break down. It'll stay forever. I mean, you put it in your flower beds, you put it in French drains, you put it wherever, and it drains exceptionally well,
Right.
but it doesn't give you the consistency.
You don't have, the limestone, the angularity of the limestone gives it some stability.
It produces a bed
Mhm.
that is not, I mean, you couldn't put gravel under there.
River
because
gravel,
It would,
yeah, it would give,
it
it
would
would
give.
spread.
You know,
Yeah.
if you've ever walked in pea gravel, it just squishes out. everywhere.
Yep.
So I think you have to use the limestone to get the stability that you need. And
You just
that's a question we can ask them, but
Just need a harder product.
you need a lot better, clean
Yep.
product.
And should that be in the contract? That
Well,
it
we
should be
could- we
clean
could
limestone
maybe
and not dirty?
Talk to,
We've said that to them several times up there in conversation, that it needs to be washed.
I mean, there are several limestone quarries around here we could figure out.
Right.
And that's a hardness scale that they determine what limestone quality goes where. We could specify where it comes from maybe and to what hardness,
I mean, at least you'd know what you're getting. That's,
hopefully.
There's
Well.
one of these quarries that has better limestone than others.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Supply new free draining limestone. What's that?
It's laser grade, whatever that is.
And laser grade. Yeah.
Love my grade.
Laser grade, where's that?
Number
Fifth bullet,
or excavate.
supply new free draining limestone and laser grade.
Oh, laser,
They're just
that means
cutting
they
the
are
level.
level it, that
Level it.
means the leveling.
Yeah, laser grade.
Oh, laser grade.
Yeah, they just
Well, we
said new free draining. So free draining, would that mean clean?
No,
Or is it just
It would just mean that it drains.
whatever kind of limestone you get is what you get?
Drain through stone,
Like it was supposed to do originally.
Yeah.
like it's been supposed to be.
That's not true. Yes.
Anything else for the good of that order? Do we need anything into executive session? Oh, we have to approve
Well,
this, don't we?
You could say, we could go forward, we could put it on the next agenda. for
So
actual-
as we discuss this, what's the board's feeling? Do we want to move forward with what was addressed today?
Basically, just to reiterate, because Mark Watson was there today.
Mhm.
So obviously you get the attorney's angle from this too.
And you all felt that this was the way?
Basically, I think Mark is saying if we don't do this, we're going to end up in arbitration
Yeah.
from the contract. And if somebody proves that this is the way to fix it, we're going to do this anyway. And he said, and it could be a year from now before you get an answer. So it's probably worth doing this. And if it doesn't work, then they're just going to have to
Come back and
start
do it
from
again.
scratch next spring. I mean, that's what it would boil down to.
I think they're okay with doing this piece of, they don't want to replace all.
They don't want to,
Yeah, right.
replace the carpet.
Sure. What's the board's pleasure? Is everybody on board with moving forward? Do we need a roll call or just put it through to the next one?
Just tell us, you tell us, it's okay, we can tell them to get it on the
Okay.
schedule.
Brett, we
And then
okay?
we'll put it on
Kyle?
Yeah, it sounds like you're gonna do the
Formal.
base the way it should have been done to begin with.
next meeting,
Exactly.
whether that's a special or whether that's June 21st.
I would like them to specify where that limestone is coming from and to what quality.
See, I'm not sure, Kyle, how it worked the first time, because again, it was before I was here, I was, more of a booster. But there was some in-kind stuff done as well.
right.
And everything was done through the Friends of Salzburger.
Yeah.
Nothing was done through the district.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure, but as Mark said today, they inspected the stone and they signed off on it, they being Moats. So whatever came from Shelley or wherever it came from, these guys that were doing the install back in '08 signed off on the quality of the stone and to put it in. So again, I'm not sure. I think it's a matter of, as Matt said, washed versus dirty. I mean, washed is obviously not gonna mud up as quick and cake together and cause the same barrier. You get a little bit longer before you get, and the other side of that first installation, if you remember correctly, and Lori and Valencia may remember this more being in the building. Remember we had the mudslide when they were building the building
Mhm.
that came down onto the turf.
Right,
So,
big time.
so how much of that didn't get addressed?
Into-
Because if you stop and think about where the puddles were before we replaced it, there was a big one right in front of the visitors locker entrance. Or was the mudslide
Right there.
right down on that side of the field. So I'm not sure how much of it is truly related to that got it all dirty and it never got clean.
It's very possible.
And then when they came in and did this installation, all the water ended up everywhere. So whatever they thought they did, they didn't, I don't think they did. And it created all these other areas of water that we didn't have before. So
Just move the concrete around. They spread it all out.
Yeah,
Right.
move it more.
like I said, every time I went by there, it was as
Puddle
smooth
more
as the top of this table. I never saw it turned over.
Dug up.
You wouldn't have thought that mud would have spread that far, but I guess there's.
Well, but as it gets underneath, and then maybe it's following a water flow and it's going so far before it gets stopped. But that, to me, that absolutely could have played a part in the original turf and the drainage problem on it.
I can't see them wrong. They divided it, so those guys,
Correct.
they knew.
That would be my only question is, I would ask them where they're getting their limestone, or where they're getting the base from. and that we make sure that it's coming from that location.
Okay, without further ado, anything we need to put into executive session tonight?
Number 2, wasn't it?
Yeah, just briefly about latter. All right. Whereas the Board of Education and other governmental bodies are required by statute to take official action and to conduct and deliberate upon official business only in open meeting unless the subject matter is specifically exempted by law. Whereas the minutes need only reflect the general subject matter of discussion in executive session, and whereas the member of the public body may hold an executive session only as a regular or special meeting for the sole purpose of consideration of any of the matters set forth below. Now therefore be it resolved under the provisions of ORC 121.22, the board hereby enters into executive session for the reason herein, personal matters,
The second one.
and yes. Consider the appointment, to consider the promotion, compensation, employees or officials. Time entering in 7:06. May I have a motion, please?
Leo move.
Hold on a second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mrs. Lee,
Yes.
Ms. Long,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mrs. Clark.
Yes. Coming out of executive session at 7:27 PM. May I have a motion, please?
Hickman will move.
A second?
Long a second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Lee,
Yes.
Ms. Long,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mrs. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Hickman.
Yes.
Speaking into adjournment, be it resolved that the Zanesville City Schools Board of Education meeting is adjourned at 7:28 PM. May I have a motion?
Long move.
Second, please.
Leo second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Ms. Long,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mrs. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mrs. Lee.
Yes.
Thank you and good night.